And we're back in the building once again. United State of Mind continues with some more content on the channel. And this time, I'm doing a video to dispel the myths on Marcus Rashford. I know he's gone, people. I know he's gone. But I still have a soft spot for Marcus Rashford, man, just because of what he represents um, and everything he's done for the club. And I feel like he's just one of the most disrespected footballers that we've had in a long time, to be honest with you. Um, and obviously people have their opinions on that. I feel like just from a Manchester United fan base perspective, he's definitely disrespected a lot more than he really needs to be. But before we do anything, people, when we get into the video, make sure you're hitting that like button, subscribe button as well if you're new, hit the notification bell and all that good stuff right there. Let's get into the video. Marcus Rashford, the breakdown, part 2. I did one very, very, very long time ago on the channel. This is the part 2 of it, and it's ultimately with him leaving the club now, or we're starting the process of that. We'll get into that in a bit. But obviously, let's talk about these key moments of Marcus Rashford. It's always good to start off with the good moments before we start getting into the actual detail of where it went wrong. So, obviously, the key moments for Marcus Rashford, obviously his debut in the Europa League against Midtjylland, scoring 2 goals in that game. Then he got the 2 goals the weekend afterwards against Arsenal to help us win that game in a crucial top 4 battle with Arsenal at that time. A goal in the Manchester derby where he nutmegs Di Michaelis and slots it in his debut derby away from home on the ground of your great rivals. Winning the FA Cup, obviously in his debut season, I believe it was, and then obviously quite recently, last season under Ten Hag, winning the League Cup twice. Obviously in that season, I think it was 16-17 under Mourinho, I believe it was, against Southampton, and then winning it in Ten Hag's debut season against Newcastle. And then obviously, winning the Europa League in 2017 under Mourinho, which was another big achievement for him. And then having his 30-goal season, which was his best personal best season from a goal scoring perspective as well, only a couple of seasons ago. The biggest key step for me that, from his time that I think is very, very understated and people don't speak about is that he's 12th all-time top scorers for Manchester United, which is a crazy feat when you're looking at some of the names that you have there. Obviously, the Bobby Charltons, the Dennis Laws, the Wayne Rooney's. Obviously, Wayne Rooney is the current top scorer of all time for Manchester United. Ruud van Nistelrooy, like Andy Cole. There's a lot of good goal scorers in that list of players, and he's just falling outside the top 10. At 27 years old, it's kind of crazy when you think about it. And it's like, I know that if a lot of United fans, I think a lot of United fans' frustration with him is if he had a little bit more consistency, he probably would be in that top 10 right now. He'd probably be pushing Andy Cole or Wayne Rooney potentially for that overall top spot. And of course, him having consistency does come with a lot of different things. It's not just down to him. Of course, some of it does have to be on his shoulders, but when you don't have a squad that's capable enough to challenge, you can't thrive within that. Good players always want to play around good players. If you don't play around good players, your level can drop. It's hard to consistently maintain a high level of ability when the ability around you isn't as good. And I think that is attributed to why he's there. And then obviously the lack of stability in terms of management. He was going into his 9th season with Manchester United with 5 permanent managers. That's a lot of instability for a player, especially when it was in his younger stages, younger development years. And even right now, at this point, you're like, well, nothing's working because you brought in all these managers and we still haven't improved in any way. So let's talk about it in all details. I mean, 426 games for Manchester United, 138 goals, 63 assists, and 6 trophies, as I mentioned a little bit earlier. Like, that is a crazy haul of statistics for someone that is very, very, the fan base is very split on, But let's now get into where it's kind of going wrong or where it's gone wrong. I mean, in my opinion, I believe he's been forced out. He's being forced out because obviously we don't know if there's going to be a permanent transfer attached to this loan move to Villa or wherever he may go after that. The reason why he's being forced out is not necessarily what people think it is. I just think it's a financial move. Ineos have come in. They want to do some cost-cutting measures, and there are some players on some high, on some high wages that need to be forced out, need to be pushed out of the club because it's not sustainable, essentially, right? He's the only one of the players he's one of the players in the squad that has the ability to fetch a decent transfer fee. I believe the obligation or option for Villa is £40 million, which is a lot of money, right? For someone who's homegrown, coming from our academy, is really valuable because it means that when he's sold, United would bank pure profit in relation to the profitability and sustainability rules. Um, you know, but then let's talk about, where I believe it's gone wrong, right? I feel like from his side, I think he's probably fed up. There's been a lot of false promises and false starts at the club. So you can imagine being a player, who's on a career trajectory where you're trying to go up. He's come into the first team. He's become a mainstay in the first team. He's getting some international recognition. You know what I'm saying, with England and whatnot. Playing in major tournaments with them. And then you bring in certain managers, of a certain caliber, like a Mourinho. Then you bring in certain players of a certain caliber, with like a Pogba or a Zlatan and things like that, a Bruno, for example, right? And you still hit a wall, right? You're hitting a wall, and like it's a lot of false promises and false starts. We're gonna compete, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that, and ultimately we fall flat on our face. That can't just be attributed to him. It's a team game. One man can't win you everything, and one man is not gonna lose you everything. And I think ultimately it's like, this is probably the simplest way I can explain it, right? He's just like you and me. We are fans of Manchester United, just like he is. He's somebody that's born and raised in Manchester, right? Has come through all the struggles of being a youth footballer and has eventually made it as a pro, right? He's like you and me, right? He's a fan of the club who's grown tired of the club's decline. And I feel like as a player, it's even worse because it's an endless cycle of mediocrity, right? They work for the club. We are fans. I can switch off my TV and decide I don't want to watch Manchester United anymore. I'll just go and watch my basketball right now. I can do that, right? He can't do that. He can't decide I don't want to play for Manchester United anymore. Like, as in, I'm on strike and I'm not playing anymore. He can't do that. He has to go into work every day. He has to have a smile on his face, regardless, right? Like, he has to have a good attitude and be professional and whatnot. Otherwise, it will be a negative impact on himself, on the players in the squad and management and all of that. And I feel like it got to the point where he's just become fed up. And like, so you're seeing that in the last 18 months, let's say, in terms of his performances, people have attributed his work rate, maybe his off the field behavior, for example, the issue in Ireland with him going out drinking and whatnot, turning up to training late, whatever, right? Obviously, he's human, so he's going to go through those things. So I can't really blame him. There's been loads of players that have played for Manchester United have had ill discipline in so many different ways, right? The fact that it's so overstated for someone like him, I think obviously some people look at his wages and say, well, he's on this amount of money, so he should act like this. But he's a human being. You can't tell somebody how to act just because this is what they're getting paid. But ultimately, being in that endless cycle of mediocrity must be a very frustrating thing as a player when you're in that club, when you know that you've been able to give everything that you can, right? You've given your time, you've given your body, right? Or you've put your body on the line for this club, the club that you love, like club you support, club you still support. Your boyhood guy, the boyhood fan of this club, and you still support them now. Like, that must hurt. Like, that must really hurt him, and it must be a very difficult situation to be walking into that every single day, seeing the decline of the club from when you were there as a kid with all these greats that were around you, the Rooneys and Ronaldos. You were walking around as a youth player. You could see them on the other pitches in Carrington, and you were hoping that you could be in their position one day, and you get there. And when you get there, it's not the same. It's not the same vibe that you had as a kid, and where the club was. It's now at a lower level, and you're the main man of that lower level, or one of the main men at that lower level that the club is at, and you're doing your best to try and bring yourselves out of that low level and into the successful period again. And ultimately, it hasn't worked out because obviously he's now at Villa. He's played a few games for Villa. He actually looked great at Villa. I feel like the biggest thing was that change of environment for him. I think he's lost his joy in football playing for Manchester United over the last few years, and hopefully he gets to recapture that joy at Villa and then beyond as he leaves the club at some point. But people were laughing when that loan move at the end of January was kind of announced, where like people are looking at Villa and saying they're a lowly club. I mean, in terms of history, they're not as big as Manchester United, but right now, in the current moment, he's at a club with a clear sporting project and stable management under Unai Emery. They've got clear direction in a sporting aspect too. With their sporting director Monchi. Villa are a better club than Manchester United right now in the Premier League, and they have been for the last couple of seasons at least. So he's gone to a better team, right, in the current standing of things, right? It's a move that benefits both United and himself. He gets an opportunity to get his joy back and play the game that he wants to, gets to work under a manager who's notoriously great at getting a lot out of his forward players. And if the loan move works out, he can get a move somewhere else, or he can stay at Villa if he's happy there, and United will bank the money that they can get from this deal. But I think ultimately with Rashford, I think once he's left the club and people have a few years to kind of like let it marinate, they're going to look at his career with fresh eyes, and they'll look at it and actually say he's achieved a lot more than really what he should have when you consider the decline of the club and, you know, what he was involved in, you know. Because currently the fan opinion suggests that he should have done more, when I feel like he did as much as he could do as one player can in the mess that Manchester United have been in over the last 12 years at least, you know. So ultimately, you know, I hope Marcus Rashford has a great loan spell at Villa, gets his joy back in football, and gets to see that electrifying player, because this is one thing that I need people to understand. I feel like Marcus Rashford at this point should be a world-class player, right? And that's ultimately, there's a number of things that would lead to that. Obviously, your skill set, which I think his skill set would have been perfect in a different era of Manchester United. If he was in that Fergie era, he would be one of the main attackers on the pitch every game for Manchester United, because he's got electrifying pace, right? He's got an eye for goal. He's got that big game mentality. You've seen it in so many different ways where he scored a number of big goals. You know, as I mentioned before, with you know, he scored in derbies, he scored in big games in the Champions League. You know, he scored in big games in the Europa League, in the FA Cup, and all of these different types of competitions where he's been able to be a match winner. And that is one of the key things from a Fergie attacker, was being a match winner, somebody that can make a difference on a day, any given day. And he has that ability, and he's always had that ability because he's grown up within that system. So I believe that if he gets his joy back, we're going to see that player again. Will he become a world-class player? At this point in his career, probably not. I wish that, you know, the conditions were right and his attitude was right, because it would have led him to being that world-class player. He should be on that top table right now with some of the players that we see as world-class, like the Mbappes or the Vinicius Juniors, you know. He should be at that top table right now, but he's not, unfortunately. And there's a number of factors towards that, just like I've explained right now. But I wanted to get his joy back, and I want him to ultimately have the best career he can have at this point, and hopefully it all works out for him. All I want to do is just say thank you to Marcus Rashford. Your service has been appreciated from this perspective of a Manchester United fan. And look, people, it's the end of the video. Make sure you're hitting that like button and subscribe button as well if you're new. Hit the notification bell. We are out. Peace.